Hello and welcome to Awaken Empower TV. I'm your host, Ethann Fox, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours. Today we have a very special guest, Mandara Cromwell, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a few moments. But first, I wanted to let you know that we have an Expo coming up this April 2015 in Michigan in the United States. Mandara will be one of our special presenters, our keynote presenter actually at the event. She'll be doing a special workshop and also a presentation on cymatics, the science of sound. We have quite a few other presenters there. I'll be there doing a consciousness event and energy transfer and discourse. We have Dr. Edward Group, who a lot of you will know. He is the health expert on the Alex Jones Show. He'll be there doing a presentation on the secret to health on Saturday of our event, and then on Sunday, he'll be doing a presentation about how to raise conscious children in the modern world. We have a lot of panel discussions, consciousness panel, health panel, and all these panels are going to be featured with quite a number of our presenters. We have David Kane, who is an expert in the field of Ormus. He'll be there talking about Ormus and how to prepare an Ormus preparation for yourself as well. We have Dr. Sam Osmanovic, who will be with me here on the show next week. Dr. Sam is the lead archaeologist in the Bosnian Pyramid Project, so he'll be here speaking about that, and we'll learn a little bit more about that next week during the show as well. We are also going to have Jay Jagadish, who is a very well-known spiritual musical artist who is on the Spirit Voyage record label, and she'll be doing a concert Friday night from 7 to 9 p.m., and then on Saturday, she's doing a workshop, Authentic Voice, a Kundalini Yoga workshop for a few hours as well. So, and she'll be joined by a few of our, she'll be joined with a few members of her band who will also be here doing that performance. Mark Romero, who I've interviewed quite a number of times, and we may have him back on the show again in the future. He's a musical artist in the field of consciousness. He does amazing work. He'll be here again. This is the second time he's coming to our expo. Ty Bollinger, who some of you may know, who is an expert on curing cancer. And I have interviewed him on our Awaken Empower radio show once. You can check that out in our Awaken Empower TV YouTube channel archives as well. So he'll be here doing a presentation about cancer, and also he'll be sitting on a health panel with a number of other guests as well. Ramania Dean Thomas, who is a Chinese herbalist who has combined traditional Chinese medicine with a raw food diet, and he'll be here doing a lecture on that, and also doing a workshop on elixirs and something that goes a little bit more in depth into the subject of Chinese herbalism. And of course, Mandera, who I'll be talking about in a moment. Michaela Sheldon, who we interviewed a couple of weeks ago, Intuitive Channel, and she is incredibly gifted, as you will see, as you've probably seen in our first show, and you will see in future episodes, and she'll be joining me again here. She'll be doing a live channeling session and taking universal questions from the audience. Dave Stetzer, who is an expert on electromagnetic fields, and who he has built the Stetzerizer filter. He will be here speaking about electropollution and smog and how to mitigate for those situations. Ken Chorley, who is also on another show in the Conscious Consumer Network. He'll be here speaking about telekinesis, aerokinesis, and doing some demonstrations as well. Barb Morey, who she's an aura reader. She actually, I've spoken about her a little bit in a lot of my other shows. And she'll be there assisting me at my energy transfer event, and also having a separate class of her own speaking about the human aura and how to see it and how she perceives that. Lisa Busan, who is a medium, a psychic medium, and she'll be there doing an event, a live mediumship gallery event as well. Kevin Ryan, who is an incredible healer, will be there speaking about different healing modalities, and also will do a live healing on the audience that's present there. He's really up and coming figure in this field of healing. Sarah King, who is a brilliant young raw food and health educator. She'll be speaking about health and raw food and diet, and also doing some live demonstrations. Valerie and Dale, Valerie Weir and Dale Prentice will be there doing a gong immersion event. So that's a great opportunity. We had that at our last expo as well. Justin Coven, who will be doing a Qigong class. And then Tina Bruglio, Rob Fournier, and George Walker will be there doing a shamanic journey and sound immersion as well. And Brian Grenadier will be doing a yoga class on Sunday also. So just an incredible lineup, and I believe we have a few others that I'm forgetting at the moment, but just an amazing lineup of people who will be here. And of course, we'll have an exhibitor room that's free to the public. You can come join us in person and experience that for yourself, and even if you don't want to attend the rest of the event. So let me tell you a little about Mandara Cromwell. She'll be joining us just a moment here. Mandara Cromwell is the founder and board chair of the International Sound Therapy Association and producer of Cymatics, the Science of Sound and Vibrational Healing annual conference. CEO and president of Cyma Technologies Incorporated, and 2013 nominee for the Thomas Edison Award for Innovation in the field of science and medicine for the AMI 750. Experiencing a love for Gregorian chant as a child, Mandara continued on her sound journey after college, traveling to India to study Ayurveda, Sanskrit chant, yoga, and meditation. Years later, she was introduced to the field of cymatics with the meeting of Dr. Peter Guy Manners, a British osteopath who discovered audible sound wave frequency patterns that affect cellular regeneration. Manners worked in collaboration with a group of scientists and medical doctors for decades, formulating biosignatures and healing frequencies for each part of the and function of the body. These cymatic signatures create cellular symphonies and nurture and nourish our body, mind, and spirit, resulting in a state of harmonious health. Since Manners' passing in 2009, Mandera spearheads Cyma Technologies and continues the research and development of therapeutic sound devices, implementing therapeutic audible frequencies. Mandara Cromwell lectures on behalf of the International Sound Therapy Association, an organization dedicated to increasing the public's awareness of the power of our thoughts and words and sounds in our environment, and promoting therapeutic sound modalities to the healing world. Most recently invited by the India Cultural Ministry, Mandara presented the Art of Sacred Sound at the Sound Art Symposium in New Delhi, India. Hi, Mandara. Thank you for joining me on Awaken Power TV today. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'd like to really start by learning more about you, your history. How did you ever end up in this particular field? And do you have any background or that actually led you in this direction?
Thank you for having me on the show, Ethan. It's very exciting to be a part of this effort. I have had things happen all throughout my life, which I think is normal for most people. If we pay attention, things happen to say, hey, make a right turn here, or go here or there. And I had the privilege of growing up in the Catholic Church. And that is where I was introduced to Gregorian chant and the architecture of Gothic-style cathedrals. And so growing up in a Catholic church, I would love it when the nuns would come to the door and say that someone had passed away, because that meant all of the elementary school children were able to go up into the forbidden area of the choir loft, where there was this huge pipe organ. And so we would be able to sing the Requiem. And at that time, I would look down over the choir banister and see all of the people assembled in this ritual. And at the time, I thought it was everybody else was seeing these swirls of energies and different colors and, you know, forms that were just really lifting up. And so that's really sort of how it all started, was my my beginning with the Catholic Church as a small child. Back then, the masses were sung in Latin. And so, of course, as we'll probably discuss, with sacred languages, Latin has its own vibration, and that certainly resonated somewhere within me.
Now, were there any significant life experiences? I ask this question to everybody because, even myself included, there were profound experiences in my life that really redirected the course of my life and made me focus on what I'm doing now. So, was there any major life experience or anything throughout your life that really changed your perspective on the world, or and maybe possibly even led you in this direction?
Yes, I have to attribute a lot of the formal childhood direction to my grandmother. My grandmother was a fan of the Farmer's Almanac and always watching the phases of the moon and the plantings and watching nature. And that has stayed with me throughout my whole life and led me to, at one point when I was in college, to looking for a farmer's almanac and stumbled into a Edgar Cayce bookstore. And when I was talking to the person behind the counter that I was looking for an almanac, she said, "Oh, you'd probably be interested in this book." And it was Alice Bailey's Esoteric Astrology, which I had never read any books on astrology at that point in my life. And I don't know if you've read that book, but I would read a few lines and go, my goodness, what is she talking about here? And then there would be the few morsels that would resonate somewhere within my being that would spur me on to want to read the rest of the book. And from that point, I was really became interested in Eastern philosophy. And so when I finished college, I traveled to India to seek wise and holy men who knew the secrets of the universe and could tell me why I was here and what am I supposed to do here. So I spent a lot of time in chanting and meditation and studying yoga. That led to Ayurveda, which then led to the study of Chinese medicine. So it's always this inner calling, answering that question that I have to say really sort of started with my grandmother and the Farmer's Almanac.
Well, you really have touched on a lot of the topics we're going to have at our upcoming expo. And I've been studying and practicing astrology and numerology for about 21 years now myself. So but I'm not familiar with that book. But I actually haven't read books on the subject in quite a long time. But I'd like to come back to astrology in a little while, since you brought that up. I wasn't sure how it related, but I'd like to know how the connection is between that and cymatics, if there is one. But first of all, I'd like to know more about, tell me more about cymatics, and for our viewers who are unfamiliar with the subject, what exactly is cymatics and why should it be important to us?
Oh, a topic near to my heart. Cymatics is a term that was coined by a Swiss medical doctor, Dr. Hans Jenny. And it turns out that, cymatics comes from the Greek word chema, which means wave. And these cymatic experiments that he would do, he would take like a tarp over say a plate, and with a transducer below, and sprinkle sand or water and generate the sound beneath the plate and watch the geometric forms take place in the standing waves. And this is really very powerful in, everything from the macrocosm to the microcosm. We can look at our health, possibly we could say that through cymatic experiments, we might measure the vibrational rates that have an effect at the cellular level. And I will say that cymatics is not new. If we look back throughout history, we will see from the beginning of time, there have been measurements of sound and vibration. And if we go back to Ernest Clodney, who is known as the father of acoustics, he was going throughout Europe in the 1700s with little plates and sprinkling sand and striking them with the violin bow to create geometric figures, showing the making sound visible. And that is exactly what cymatics is, the science of making sound visible.
Now, I know a lot of ancient structures, and we spoke about cathedrals earlier on in your Catholic upbringing and so on. A lot of them embody these sacred geometric symbols and cymatics into their architecture. Do you? I'm curious about one particular one. There's the Angkor Wat. Are you familiar with that one?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I know the Angkor Wat is actually the symbolism. Now I've never been there physically, but if you look at it from the sky, it's a three-dimensional symbol, and I'm not sure what the symbol is. I can't remember what that was exactly, but it's a symbol that I've seen in a lot of artwork and such, a lot of spiritual artwork from India and so on. What do you suppose the symbolism? Well, can you tell me anything about what you know about Angkor Wat, first of all, and why do you suppose that symbolism was embodied so that it's seen from space or from the sky?
I think it's really fascinating. I've never been there physically myself either, but I've seen lots of film footage and stills. I think it's important that it's from space, because if we look even back into the Vedic cosmology, which is the oldest text that we have that speaks about the planets and our universal system, how we resonate actually with things in space. And this, there's a text within the Vedas that talks about Vastu Shastra, which is the art of sacred construction, or the scientific aspect of construction. And some people may relate to this more easily if they think in concepts of feng shui, which is the Chinese aspect that has become popular the last couple of decades in the US. And so all of the planets, everything in our system, has this vibration, this language, this mathematical formula that connects all of us, which, by the way, I think is really interesting that you have the flower of life is your symbol, because that is, the blueprint of all life. And if we look into the solar systems, we will see this communication system that lands geometric figures within our earthly plane, like Angkor Wat. And there are hot spots, or maybe that's the wrong term to use at this point, but very special spots within our globe that people definitely feel certain resonances. They come into alignment or maybe not alignment. And I think that things like Angkor Wat, spots like the Egyptian pyramids, there are the pyramids in the Mayan culture, all throughout we're being connecting these, we'll call it chakras of the earth. These real special vibratory rates. When people go there, they have amazing experiences. That is, if they're, sort of switched on, or if they're in tune with what they're really feeling, if they become sensitive to the subtle energies of that spot, you will feel almost a realignment. And so I think that is one of the reasons, or one of the reasons for being able to see this geometric pattern from space, is that it's a channel from other heavenly bodies that are helping us. I believe they're helpful to, maintaining the life and the resonance of life on this planet.
Now, is there a significance? I know a lot of these ancient structures and cathedrals especially are built on vortex points of the planet, and a lot of the cathedrals are even on the same ley lines. What is the significance of them having been built there? Does that imply some sort of amplification of the symbology or the vibrations created in the energy of the cathedral?
Well, that is my belief, and there's a lot of information out there pointing to that. And again, that dates back to, if we look at Vedic cosmology, and I go to the Vedas because they're the oldest surviving scriptural texts that we're aware of. They talk about being in harmony with nature. Here we have the more of a macrocosm. We go into space and the different galaxies and universes. We have a correlation with sounds and vibrations there. In the Vedic text, they talk about mantras and yantras, and these are geometric forms that we can use to align ourselves with to help us stay in a vibrational state of optimum resonance. Vedic astrologers, to get over into the astrology world, they talk about or prescribe, suggest that the person wear certain gemstones to align and work with the cosmic energy of certain planetary forces. And so I think that we see these structures of what I call resonant architecture, the cathedrals and the temples that are built on these vortexes that harness the magnetic grid points on this planet. And those are indeed aligned with, higher forms of celestial intelligence, in my view.
You mentioned a lot of interesting topics there. There was the Sri Yantra you mentioned, which I've actually got some of them around my house. And now the symbology, a lot of Sri Yantras, they're very specific. Some are specifically focused toward luck. Some are focused toward money or good fortune or something like that, or health, for example. So there are different Sri Yantras for different purposes. And my question is, now even, for example, Angkor Wat, if you look at it from the sky, it looks like a Sri Yantra of some kind, right? And so obviously, first of all, have you found that in cymatics research that they've actually been able to come up with sound frequencies that produce any of these Sri Yantras?
There is some footage that is produced by Macromedia, Jeff Volk, and you will see some in the footage that he offers, and I think he offers that on his website, where you can see the vibration in water. Water is really powerful because, the planet is over 70% water. Our bodies are over 70% water. And you can see these geometric patterns in droplets of water take shape, and usually they're 5 and 6 sided figures. And the Sri Yantra is a very powerful geometric form, again coming down through Vedic cosmology. And I would like to add here, Ethan, that a lot of the geometric forms, they have their architecture, but we live on a planet where we are co-creators with the vibration in which we are living. And so the power that we possess within our heart, within our mind, of aligning specific intention with, say, the Sri Yantra for luck or prosperity or abundance, that's where we come into a coherent meditative thought, shall we say, or intention, where we go, I am placing this Sri Yantra in this particular part of my physical living quarter because of abundance, of prosperity, of health. And so I believe that's all of the aspects of those. It's our part to co-create because we do live on the planet of free will.
So you don't think that the symbol itself embodies a certain vibration of its own? Or...
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I apologize for any mistake in that. I definitely think, I believe that the shape has tremendous significance, but we make that come alive when we as co-creators align our intention with that.
I see. So both have to be in harmony for it to be successful, essentially.
I believe so.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about Vastu Shastra, or Vastu architecture, which is becoming really popular around the world. Well, I don't know about popular, but I know a couple of Vastu architects now, actually. And have you heard of the Mayans Anti-Ram, the book?
Yes, I have, and this is a real favorite topic of mine. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of friends. They always say, "We know if we can't find you, you're in a temple somewhere," because that architecture is very profoundly powerful. When you walk into this type of architecture, and in most of the temples where there's a resurgence today, they maintain silence. And so when you are sitting or even just standing under one of those amazing domes that to me represent the crown chakra, I feel a sonic realignment in every part of my body, but particularly, in the, in my upper chakras, the third eye and the crown chakra. You just feel this realignment. There are some organizations like the Swami Narayan Baps organization. They are very much proponents of reviving this type of architecture, and it is really very powerful. I invite people, to find one of those temples. They're building them here in the United States, and also other parts and overseas.
So tell me about you mentioned earlier about astrology and the connection between what you're doing and how it originated with some understanding of astrology, or at least you were inspired. What do you see as the connection between cymatics, if anything, and astrology?
I see the connection of geometry, sacred geometry, because of astrology, astronomy. The stars are just amazing to look at. I remember as a child, my grandmother talking about the vibration of the stars, or the constellations. And I grew up in the Midwest in a rural area, and we had lots of cottonwood trees. And I remember one day coming into my grandmother and saying, the cottonwood tree is singing a particular song. And of course, it's always great when a small child has an adult around them that doesn't cut that off and just says, oh yes, I know what you mean, I can hear it too. But the relating cymatics to astrology, to astronomy, to the star systems, it's again these geometric forms that come into a visible reality. The if you look at cymatic footage, you will see when the tone is very simple, that it's a simple geometric form. But as the sound, the volume, amplitude is increased, you see the geometry expand and become more complex. And there is a part within increasing that amplitude that all of the sand, or shall we say the water, whatever medium is being used, goes into this chaotic form. And to me, that represents the cycles that we see within all of time. We see it in our planetary systems. We see stars are being born and at the end of their life, and then what comes into, all types of astronomical effects that we've been able to witness firsthand through technology and our Hubble telescope. And we see it within our physical systems when people have something maybe traumatic that has happened in their lives, and then we can look back within a certain period of time where the geometry of those cells has actually changed, and some dis-ease or some disharmony has begun to set in. We see this a lot in people who have a difficult time with change. And I think we're at that time in history right now where we have polarization happening with people and their thoughts and political systems and people with a lot of fear and anxiety. And how do we raise above that? This is a time cymatically that the amplitude is ramping up. And so we have a lot of chaos before the new geometric pattern really presents itself as we would like it to.
Hey, earlier you mentioned, well, you've been speaking a lot about chakras, and it sounds like you're very energy sensitive as well. Is that a fair assumption?
That's a fair assumption.
Okay.
Yes.
And you speak a lot about how the cathedrals have certain kind of symbology or cymatics built into them such that it stimulates the chakras. Now, I'm curious, since the origins of a lot of these cathedrals are from a Catholic foundation, and from my understanding, the Catholic religion has been primarily used to control people, what would have been the motivation, do you think, in having the symbology embedded into the cathedrals if it actually enhances a person's well-being or connection to spirit?
I think that in my belief, what happens is a couple of things. There are those who succumb to greed and power and want to be in charge and control. And so those are the people that come in and say, we're going to destroy these pagan sites and we're going to build a church. We're going to build a cathedral in honor of, we'll say, the Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mary, the Divine Mother. And then we have the craftsmen and the architects that are maybe infiltrated a little bit with the people who are holding the secrets. And we've had these secret mystery schools, you know, from the times of Aristotle, Plato, Pythagoras, the Egyptians. You know, we read about these secret societies all throughout history. And I think also within the time when there was the Crusades and the big Gothic cathedrals and that type of architecture that was coming into being, I think that there were those messengers that were part of the architectural team that said, oh, this makes sense. We're going to align this cathedral, we'll just say the Chartres Cathedral, which is a famous cathedral in the south of France. We're going to align this to the dedication of the Blessed Mother, and we're going to point it to the east, and it'll be at a time when the sun is in Virgo. And there are a lot of coincidences, shall we say, with that. And the church would just say, fine, as long as, you know, we can capture those who journey for spiritual harmony or homage. And so I think they weren't really paying attention to what maybe the master craftsmen were doing. It was they were really too busy looking elsewhere, and as long as it was a new structure with, we'll say, their autograph on it, because, you know, that's their power, that's their greed, that's their fame, their vanity, that they want to put their stamp on it. I think that's how it succeeded. Even in a small chapel in Edinburgh, Scotland, outside of Edinburgh, is the Roslin Chapel. And this chapel was made famous by Dan Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code. It's actually from the 15th century, and in that chapel, there are in the arches of the chapel are little cubes of spiritual significance. And here we can relate back to, like, the Chladni plates, where the Masons most likely took the plates and said, we want to leave this embedded in stone to guide those who come after us in some type of sonic guidance, a sonic instruction of, hey, if you recreate this with the voice or with a particular musical instrument, this will help the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and the physical body come into an alignment. Also in this particular chapel is what they call the apprentice pillar. And I don't know if you've heard this story, but the main architect of this chapel went to Rome to have the meeting with the cardinals and the Pope of that time. And while he was gone, his apprentice had this experience, this, we'll say, meditation or channeling download to create a specific pillar that, interestingly enough, looks a little bit like a DNA helix. Anyway, there's a lot of symbology encoded in this apprentice pillar. When the head architect came back from Italy, he immediately ostracized that apprentice and said, you know, no, you're going the wrong way. Was it revealing too many secrets? That's a possibility. But my point is that we can look throughout history and see these little symbols, this different geometric shapes that are embedded and encoded, just like the flower of life. We see it all throughout India and China, in Turkey and Israel. You know, it's in walls of caves, and yet it appears in really great architectural feats as well. So I think that's how you know, it has survived throughout this day. Today, I believe there's this resurgence, partly because of technology. I mean, my background is in art history. And so when I studied art history in college, believe me, we didn't get too much into this type of thing. But because of the internet and because of everybody being really switched on, you know, we're a society where people are becoming more in tune with the energies around them. We have people that are saying, you know, I'm being affected by the EMFs, or I don't feel good when I'm in this particular spot, or I feel really great when I go here. And so people are aligning with those energies. That, combined with the secrets that were embedded by those special craftsmen throughout the ages, we're now connecting all the dots.
So how do you suppose that this knowledge got lost in the first place? It sounds like back in the time of the building of a lot of these cathedrals and ancient structures, there were at least craftsmen who possessed this wisdom and knowledge of cymatics. How did it get lost in time? And can you elaborate also about how you believe that technology is causing a resurgence of this understanding?
Again, I think that the knowledge went underground, shall we say, because of, you know, greed and power. They say something happens when people get, you know, if you really want to test them, give them a little bit of power and see what happens. We see that all throughout history in politics. And so I believe that everything would go underground for a period of time, and then there were these people who would hold the secrets, and if they were found out and exterminated, then maybe things kind of went underground for quite some time. We can look at the Kabbalistic text, the Jewish mysticism, the Tree of Life, of how all of that went underground for you know, many centuries, and how that was kept alive through what we call today the Tarot, and how the symbols have shifted. And so there were ways that people would find to keep some semblance of the truth alive. I think that with power and greed of those who are in charge, they would always find a way to keep it from the masses, and if they could control the masses. And so we'll go back to a not so favorable side of the Catholic Church, where they took away, and we'll go here to the solfeggio notes, the tones, where those notes were slightly shifted. So I will bring that down to a very simple example of cooking in the kitchen. Maybe there's a really great chef and he writes a cookbook and it's a bestseller. He writes the recipe almost as he made it, but he leaves out one little secret ingredient. And so, I think that is most likely what happened as the Catholic Church saw that people were having too much power. How do we get them to come to the church for, their spiritual food? And then at one point, we have, shall we say, the welfare system where they come to the church because they need help with other types of existence in their lives. We come to a lot of control in that area, but yet we have the special secrets coded within that architecture. And if you look at the cross and the different ways, I'm going to go back to the Chartres Cathedral because a lot of people have been there and a lot of people have studied. There's a lot of footage on that, thank you to the internet, where people can look as soon as you enter the Chartres Cathedral. There's the labyrinth where you can travel, integrating the right and the left hemispheres of the brain, getting ready to walk up that part of the cross where through the resonant architecture, those buttresses that harness different sounds as you are progressing up to the altar, and realigning physically, mentally, emotionally, so you're really ready for that spiritual initiation once you get to the altar.
Well, my question was specifically, and I think you answered it to some degree, was really how did we lose this knowledge over the centuries when it was obviously common knowledge with at least the people who built the cathedrals? And I think you answered that, but is there anything else you want to say on that subject?
I will just say that all throughout time, we have had artists and architects, people in the arts, people who are connected with nature, people who are questioning, that have connected these dots for us. We can see this represented even in the drawings of Leonardo da Vinci. And just last year or a couple years ago, I remember one of his sketchbooks was released and in book format. And it's amazing to see here is another person in history who is pointing out to us these sacred geometric patterns of life. How cymatics plays into that is very rarely do people take the time to, or even aware that we can make sound visible. It takes some effort. With light, we've been able to, well, particularly visible light, we're able to view that. But with sound, even though it's audible sound, we can't see it. There was the work of Dr. Emoto, who recently left us, and his work is of significance to us because he would take water and apply certain vibrations to that water. And have it frozen, and then under a high-powered microscope watch the geometric forms of those ice crystals as it melted. And he gave examples of music for that was for Bach or Mozart, and those are beautiful water crystals. We saw the dissonance of heavy metal music, and so we look at ourselves from a physical, a spiritual, emotional perspective with these types of sounds. And so I will go back to the sacred architecture, the resonant architecture of the cathedrals and temples, where when one walks in, you can't escape those energy patterns that those walls, that architecture is emanating. You must be silent. You must be quiet and go, wow, what is this? Where am I? And I think that really has a profound effect when people go to a very special place like one of these temples built on Vastu Shastra and the Angkor Wat style. Even the Gothic style cathedrals are amazing. I remember the first time as a child hearing on a Mother's Day Mass someone sing Ave Maria, and it was so beautiful that I felt I could take flight. And this is the same when you hear people chant from the Torah or Sanskrit, Vedic texts. These vibrations really, for me, a personal experience is that I feel like I'm lifting up, I'm taking flight. And so the resonant architecture is to be commended for all those people who are bringing it back into fashion. Technology is very important in that it gets the message out and to a lot of people. We have people who really want to have the science and the physics of what's really happening here. The good news is that technology is allowing us to prove a lot of the things that we innately know. And there are some amazing people out there who are bringing that into lay terms. I was recently at a conference with Nassim Haramein, and he's one of the people today who are coming forward and explaining things in lay terms. I see 10 years ago, I founded an organization, the International Sound Therapy Association, and although we do collect data and research on the effects of sound and vibration at the cellular level, what's happening within the physical states, we do have an outreach program where we talk to people just at a very simple level. How do we reach people and make them aware of what's happening? And I'm reminded by this story of the Buddha, where a Brahmin priest one day saw the Buddha meditating under a tree and said, oh, are you an angel? And the Buddha said, no. And he said, are you a god? And the Buddha said, no. And he said, are you a spirit? And the Buddha said, no. And the Brahmin said, well, who are you? And the Buddha said, I am awake. And it's being awake, being aware that people start to look at, we'll say, the common sense of sound. That's when cymatics will begin to make sense to everyone, because it's not a common word in our vocabulary yet. For the International Sound Therapy Association, when we do our outreach programs, we have a simple bookmark. I know not too many people read real books anymore, but it's something they can put on their refrigerator. We ask people just to become aware of the sound in in the environment of which they're living their day. Are the sounds giving them energy, or are they depleting their energy? Just become aware of the words that you speak. Are the words soft and gentle, or do they have sharp edges? I have a special little shop that I like to go into for tea in Midtown here in Atlanta, and I love going in when one particular person is working there, because she always greets me and she goes, "Hello, love. What can I get for you today?" And to have somebody say, "Hello, love," whatever attitude you had coming in from the traffic or stress, it just melts away. We also ask for people to become mindful of the music that they're listening to when they're having their meal. And, you know, we have a lot of people who write emails and post on our pages that say, you know, I tried having a meal with hard rock, and then I tried a meal with jazz, and then I tried a meal with, you know, Gregorian chant, and then I had tried a meal with meditation music, and I tried a meal with silence. And I invite everybody to try that little experiment and see how your digestive tract likes whichever one of those types of music, those types of sound in your environment. I think once people start becoming aware of these aspects of sound, then we'll be able to bring them along. It's kind of like that fifth grade vocabulary that we say that we are told that all the newscasters are said to only use words equivalent to a fifth grade level, because we want everybody to understand what's going on in the news. And when we have these amazing concepts, which we have the people like Nassim who are bringing into our language, our simple language, these complex concepts. And then when we can introduce it to the masses, then we can really see change and the remembrance, because I truly believe that a lot of people really remember. They just haven't remembered that they remember yet.
Yeah, I'm actually familiar with Nassim. I attended his physics symposium some years back. Very interesting guy. And actually, that's where I heard about the Mayan Zanturan book. And so you were speaking about different kinds of music, and I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit. Have you done any research or seen research that you find compelling as to how the different kinds of music affect us, and what may be more positive versus more negative influence?
That there is a lot of research out there in the music therapy world, and music therapy is its own study, and I'm very grateful for their work. Sound therapy is a little different in that it encompasses all sound, including music, and there was a French ENT, ear, nose, and throat physician, Alfred Tomatis, and he wrote about different sounds, and it was really his premise that, you know, we should find the music that resonates most with whatever our, you know, environment will support. He said that there were two types of music that he found worldwide that everybody responded to positively, and that was the music of Gregorian chant and the music of Mozart. And that there were some parts of a society where maybe their folk music, they responded very well, and also the dissonance of, since we just talked about heavy metal music, does that have a place in our society? there was a workshop that I attended many years ago with Don Campbell, and there were a lot of medical personnel in that workshop, and we were talking about the different types of music for healing. And there was a nurse there from an operating room, and she said, my physician listens to heavy metal music while he's performing surgeries. And of course, all of us went, oh, golly, hope we never get a surgeon like that. And Dawn asked her, what type of surgeon do you work with? And she replied, a orthopedist. And so if you think about an orthopedist, in the surgery room, they're using a lot of hammers and saws and things like that. And really, if you think about it, Ethann, I think all of us want the music that our surgeon does his or her best job to be playing if we have to undergo the knife. And today, by technology, we have those wonderful things called iPods and MP3 players where we can have our little headset on while the surgeon performs whatever his task is to the music that he prefers. Personally, for me, I like things that are a little more gentle and prefer more relaxing types of music. We live in a world where things are ramped up all of the time, and so I like things a little more relaxing. I will say that I do listen to hard rock and maybe even sometimes heavy metal when it's very late at night and I have to remain conscious on the road. So we learn to use sound and music to serve us rather than just being exposed to whatever and letting it, run away with, our physical state, our mental, emotional, and spiritual state. I mean, if you look at all of the people who teach meditation, usually the music that they're using is something very calm, something that doesn't have a percussive beat where your heart is in training to that beat. And I think that's an important thing with music today. Is it serving us by having it really ramped up? Because, on every corner is a coffee shop where people can go in and get a double espresso with lots of caffeine. And, we're already a society that wants to accomplish more and more. Remember when, I remember in elementary school when they said we have these things coming that are computers and they're going to make us have such less work that we'll have at least 4 days a week that we'll be able to take off and enjoy life. Well, we know how that worked out, but but the whole thing about technology and music, it's a very exciting time, and I think we need to be commanders of our own ship and select the music that supports us and how we get through.
So what do you think about restaurants? I mean, obviously, most restaurants I've been to, they're not very conscious of the music, and it's usually rock and roll or something that's very heavy and intense, or even bars, for example.
That's a really big pet peeve of mine. Music in restaurants is really leaves a lot to be desired. I have had the privilege to dine in some very fine restaurants with some really wonderful chefs, and the food that they present is exquisite and artistically expressed on the plate, to the tune of some very incongruous music. And that is the one thing that I do when I go to a restaurant. I will tell the manager, I'll say, I've had a beautiful meal, and I must say that your ambient music is not congruous to the quality of food that you're sharing here with the public. Whenever I go to a restaurant and they're playing good music or music that doesn't let my, or doesn't, I don't feel this clenching in my torso, I tell them, I say, you know, thank you for playing this relaxing music. And I say, you know, I'm a member or the founder, depending on the situation, of the International Sound Therapy Association, and I'm going to nominate your restaurant for being ISTA approved so that people can come in here and enjoy this wonderful environment, this food. And, you know, another thing is, you know, when I go to eat, usually it's a social event. It's a ritual. It's a very, you know, you are breaking bread with another person. You are sharing this ritual, mini ritual of life. And can you hear the other person talk, or do you have to yell across the table to express, you know, your views, or share just in light conversation? So I do select my restaurants according to the sound that they make. And a lot of times I'll go to a restaurant that maybe it doesn't have as you know, the top chef there, but they have wonderful music playing.
So we have a big sound and musical component to our upcoming expo. And have you ever heard of Mark Romero? He's one of our presenters.
Oh, absolutely. I love Mark.
Yeah. So what do you think? I don't know if you know Mark's story very much, but he had his music was analyzed by NASA, and it has a unique tone in the music that he's not intentionally putting there. And so his understanding is that there's a higher consciousness flowing through him that somehow imbues his music with this special tone that has an effect on people. Now, I've tested his music. So I'm a little left-brained as well, and so I've tested his music on hundreds of people here, and the results are just amazing. So there's obviously something there, but he's not doing this on purpose or with a conscious intention anyway. What do you think is happening there? Do you have any theories on that?
I do. I think Mark is one of the true artists. He's one who has come again to share this wonderful information that we in this interview are connecting the dots throughout history. And it is not, particularly for musical artists, they get into their groove. It is a groove that they get into, and it happens. The art happens. The healing, the alignment, it just happens because they're, I will say, cosmically aligned. They have the cosmic wind at their back. They are aligned planetarily. They are aligned with their intention. They have surrendered in their heart, and you know, they go forward with the intention of, I'm going to be, you know, the divine player, just expressing live consciousness. Because I believe the few times that I have seen Mark is that he is present and he's right there with the music. It is a co-creation of energies that's happening. It's a real gift. And it would be great to you know, have the technology to examine every aspect of this. And I think what the solution is, Ethann, is to assist every person that we can to come into their own space, their own zone, to hear that inner sound. I think what Mark does, and the people like him, they are creating this in an outer experience. And once we are quiet and we go within, that inner experience is there for us. We just have to tap into it. And that is a great tribute to meditation and all the people that have come forward in the 60s and the 70s, and the teachers of meditation that we have, finding that inner sound. But I think that's exactly what Mark does. He tunes in and he goes inward, and that is an outer expression of an inner experience.
I'd like to know more about what you think are the implications in a material sense on our personal lives and in the world of our evolving understanding of cymatics now. Where is this going, and how is it going to impact us?
I am a longtime meditator, and some years ago in a meditative state, I heard this voice that said, one day cymatics will become a household word. And I was instructed at that time that I should create a conference, in honor of cymatics, of which I did and still do have it every fall. And cymatics is really important in our society because we're such a visual society. We want to see it happening. We have had, there are some contemporary researchers in cymatics. Dr. Yenny is no longer with us, but there are many contemporary researchers throughout the world. One of them in Germany is Alexander Lauterwasser, and you can see a lot of his work online and in his beautiful book. And John Reed is in the UK, and there are some other researchers from Eastern Europe that are coming forth. And by showing the visible sound geometric shapes, people are mesmerized. They see the sound of their voice and they go, oh my goodness, I made that shape. Or they see the sound of some music, and I had the privilege of attending a concert with Alexander Lauterwasser where he had his camera and everything set up, and the musicians, the music that they were playing was being expressed on the screen through the cymatic images. And I have to say that the musicians were really top shelf, but everybody was watching that screen with the cymatic images, the water sound images forming. It is truly mesmerizing. And I think that where we are going with this is the awareness, that Buddhic awareness of being awake, of being aware that sound plays an amazing part of our environment. And, I'll go back to the Antaram, which we spoke about just a few minutes ago, which is basically the grammar of the 5 arts, the expression, the poetry, the music, the dance of the Indian classics. And in that text, it talks about Om sound and Om light. And very rarely do we see in the text where light and sound are coupled together, because we have in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and God said, light, let there be light. So they sort of forget about in the beginning was the Word. They go, oh, light, and then the universe happened. And in the Vedas, Lord Vishnu is resting on the cosmic shoreless ocean in silence. And when the silence is broken, that cosmic hum of Om that we know of, when it comes down to our vibrational level that we can actually hear, it's expressed as the cosmic Om. And we read about these in the texts. Also, James Hurtak in the Keys of Enoch, he's in our time, that in the early 70s had this amazing experience that he has documented of where he was vibrationally changed in his experience of taken up to high heavens, and where the word activates the light, and the light activates the mantra vibration, and the mantra vibration then mixes with the transducer coding and in the embryonic tissue. And just as Greg Braden says in his book, The God Code, where Yod-He Vod-He, the names of God, the divine names of God, are revealed within our DNA. And so we look at this and we go, okay, there's the poetic part of sound and light through scriptures and through, our poetry and music. But now we have physicists and scientists who are using our technology today looking at this. And we have scientists from Denmark who are saying, oh, the nerves don't use electricity to communicate. It's really sound. And we have, there's a book, Inside the Photon, by Dr. Anthony Fleming and Elizabeth Bauer. And they talk about how the light and the sound, the photon and the phonon, the biophonon are really two sides of the same coin. That the biophonon creates the structure, and therefore the light comes through and connects all the communication. So it's so exciting to be on the planet at this time with this technology. And I believe that more and more, when people see this through not only the internet, but especially through conferences like you are doing, because believe me, it's a really important thing for people to come together and as community experience this. We are seeing through technology, all of this is coming together.
Now, you mentioned how in cymatics the sound produces a particular symbol or movement in the pattern, right? Now, would you say in a lot of ancient symbology and sacred geometry, or let's say, for example, the flower of life embodies a certain energetic field or impression on its environment, same thing with Sri yantras and so on. So if somebody were to speak into one of these, if somebody were to speak and create a particular symbol in the sand, for example, or and create a piece of artwork from that, would that artwork embody the essence of that voice?
I believe so. That is my belief system. I believe that we can learn a lot by the voice. There are systems out there that, shall we say, decode the voice. A lot of people have used them to, I won't say diagnose, but as an evaluation of a person's health, that if you're missing certain notes or certain keys, that points to a certain deficiency or area where you maybe have too much of a particular sound. And I've seen a lot of voice analysis reports where it was very interesting that people who had been medically diagnosed with a particular condition, that all of the people in that patient group that were diagnosed with that particular condition, interestingly, had the same lack of vibrational frequencies in their voice. I think that is a really very key way to determine maybe a medical course of action or a way of maintaining health. And I worked with and met a British osteopath in 2001, Dr. Peter Guy Manners, and he spent most of his life researching different sound frequency and vibrations for the physical body and for maintaining health. And he is no longer with us on this plane, but he did say that he foresaw a day when we were born, have a type of scan, a vibrational scan of every part of our body, and then possibly every 7 years or a particular cycle of time, that we would go in for a new scan, and all of that data would be collected, so that, let's say, heaven forbid, at age 17 we were involved in a car accident and something very severe happened, we could go back to age 14 when our last print was taken to help reintroduce those frequency patterns for the body to regain its physical health. And with technology, as we know, Ethan, it can be a double-edged sword. There are, for as much good sound that there is out there, there is sound that can destroy. And hey, look at the opera singer that can destroy a wonderful crystal wine glass. And we use sound to destroy through a process called lithotripsy in our hospitals. They can pulverize kidney stones and gallstones. So, that's a good thing. What we need to look at, though, in those types of applications is what caused those kidney and gallstones. And if we look back in the voice print, say the vibrational print, and right now we're just speaking about the voice, but I believe that there are other opportunities that are being researched by our universities right this moment. But if we look at that and say, we notice that these frequency patterns are prevalent in your environment, and this could possibly be the cause of your kidney stones or gallstones.
Are you familiar with Dr. Peter Garayev? He's a Russian geneticist.
I have heard. I have not studied any of his work.
I spoke with him about a year and a half ago, and he's pioneering a new field called linguistic wave genetics. It's an entirely new approach to genetics, and it really is more similar to vibrational healing than conventional genetics. But he's approaching it from a very scientific. He's basically a scientist, so it's not really approaching it from more of a holistic health standpoint. But so he's done some experiments. For example, there was a plant experiment that he did where he found that transmitting voice with intention actually conveys genetic information to the plant. So they took plants that were in poor health and dying, and they had people speak in multiple languages with an intention to the plants, and the plants actually that were in the experimental portion of the experiment, the control plants just continued to wither away. The experiment plants actually had a genetic change as a result of what was being spoken to them, where the control plants had no change. And what he further took his study, and he found that speaking swear words, for example, actually has an adverse genetic effect. And so his conclusion of all of this is that we're actually transmitting genetic information while we speak, and that genetic information is impacting those around us, plants, but people as well. So do you have any thoughts on our voice? And for example, let's say we were to take somebody who's an enlightened master, and he were to speak into a recording, and somebody was to listen to that recording. Do you think that recording conveys the essence of that person and may even raise consciousness? Or if you're listening to a recording from somebody who has a very negative or a very low consciousness, that might also affect us in that way?
Ethan, I definitely believe there's a profound effect on the words that we speak. And it reminds me of an experiment that Bruce Lipton shares, where he had two petri dishes with cells, and one dish they introduced nutrition, and the other dish they introduced like a toxin, and how the cells of the toxic introduction actually began to retreat and try to escape. And so there we see, just in a simple laboratory experiment, the cells that were in with the vitamins, the nutrition, the cells gravitated right away to the nutrition, because innately it's supportive. We know that. The studies that are coming out of Eastern Europe are really something to take note of, because they study things that maybe our universities aren't studying yet. and we'll just look at the whole genetic pool. Remember when in our laboratories, the research were saying, oh, 90% of the DNA is junk DNA. And it was really the Russians who took a hold of that and, created collaborative groups of geneticists and scientists and researchers to say, hey, this can't all be junk. What can really happen? And genetics has been shown to be influenced by words and by light and sound. And this is a very promising area of, I believe, medical research. It will be really phenomenal to see what our universities come out with in the next 5 years. Just a few years ago at the University of Missouri, there was a biological engineering team that created a photoacoustic device that you could hear as few as 10 melanoma cells in a blood sample. So if you can hear that in a blood sample, what else could we hear? Could we hear the patterns of maybe someone who grew up in an abusive situation? Could we hear the patterns of someone who every day went in to get a cup of tea and was greeted with, hello, love? I believe we can, and we will see that coming very soon.
Dr. Garayev actually was able to, in animal experiments, he was able to regrow organs inside of his test subjects by using this understanding of wave genetics. And so it seems like using sound or vibration has the power to regenerate organs and maybe even extend life. Now, this is purely theoretical, but I'm curious your thoughts on it. Assuming we take the Bible literally, and that people used to live for hundreds or thousands of years at one time, do you think that there is some connection to cymatics or sound, or maybe even the vibration of the planet as a whole, that might have influenced that lifespan?
I believe so, and I believe it is the respect and the knowledge, the wisdom that they used everything in nature to create a resonant universe. And I believe that's how the temples first came into being, and I believe that the temples are probably our first hospitals, because people would journey to those places when they couldn't find the answer anywhere. They knew that a wise woman or a wise man lived in a particular place that might be able to help them. And those places are usually on special vortexes, places where magnetic grids harnessing light and sound and magnetics are our three most powerful universal energies come together and create a type of resonance. And that wise man or wise woman, that priest, that priestess, that doctor or medical personnel holds the space for that person to regain their balance, become aware of what's happening within them, because their cymatic images within them have become kind of chaotic. So how do they recontact that higher geometric form that they optimum or is their optimum health? And this is a little bit with the work of Peter Guy Manners. When I met Manners in 2001, he was 97 years old. And what really caught my attention was that he moved like a 30-year-old. He just looked like a picture of health, was very vibrant. And so I knew something was very different about what was going on there. And so after studying with him and his frequency patterns that he collaborated with and his body of work, what he found was it was multiple frequencies creating a harmonic. So that kind of like 5-strand harmonics, that feed the DNA, feed the cellular structure, and kind of like a master pitch pipe that brings all the cells back into a type of coherent and geometric pattern. And I believe this is where cymatics comes in. Of course, he called his therapy cymatic therapy out of tribute to Dr. Yenny. And I believe that I know we did have many conversations about how he saw the cymatics of the cells, as he had a person before him who would come, usually had very complicated health situations where people would come to see him, and he could see the cymatic chaos within their body. Now, again, that's a subjective thing, and we, not all of us can see that, but I think we're going there with our modern technology. I think at extending life and longevity in a way that we all have a quality of life, not just that we're extending the quantity of life, but we actually have a quality of life that is extended. And this is a little something that I find very interesting. People ask me, how long did Dr. Manners live? Well, he lived until 105. And what happened to him? And when he was 101, he married his third wife. He had outlived two wives, and he married a woman. He was 101, and she was 72. And all 72-year-olds in her community were retiring. So she asked him to retire and that they could travel, etc. So it was only 18 months after he had closed the clinic and was away from what I call the sea of frequencies, and he began the signs of regular degeneration that we see today, of losing mental focus, losing clarity, losing that exuberance that he once had. So take a person away from their life passion is one thing, but taking them away from positive sound could be an indication that maybe we should pay attention to this. Maybe we should bathe ourselves in wonderful sounds every single day, every moment, and that would add to our longevity.
So if you were to suggest a particular type of music that we might consider listening to that would extend our longevity, just based on your research so far, what would you say that would be?
I would say something that doesn't trip up the heartbeat. The heart is a really amazing organ, as our whole body is, but the heart, it seems to be the real brain of it all, as we have found in some of the research out there. And if the beat of the music that you're listening to is causing your heart to beat faster, if it's causing any anxiety or stress, I would caution you and say you might want to take a look at that. Moving throughout the day, we see in, again, the ancient Vedas, Indian classical music that represents different hours of every day, the different ragas so there are certain sounds that we hear in the morning. The birds come and sing, the sun is coming out, the leaves and all of the critters are waking up, the petals of the flowers are beginning to open. There's a different type of music cadence that happens at that particular time of day. When we're at high noon, there's a different type of vibration. And then all throughout the day, this is represented through the ragas in Indian classical music. And if we become aware in our lives of this, we'll be able to, I believe, live longer. Even just the I mean, how many times do you sit down and eat just because it's time to eat? Maybe not because you're hungry, but, you know, there's that, you know, pre-dedicated schedule that says, okay, this is the only time you're going to have to eat today, so you better eat something. But we're not really following the natural rhythm of life. You know, the Chinese are really famous for mapping out the whole universe, the macrocosm and the microcosm, and they track the star systems. They, you know, everything in the macrocosm is represented internally. And if we look at Chinese medicine, we've got the Big Dipper, and we've got everything within our own body. So my advice to people is to just find your natural rhythm. Maybe it's not quite what everybody expects your rhythm to be, but if we could be mindful and appreciative that everybody is a little different, everybody does beat to a little bit of a different drum, and be respectful of each other, I think we'll have a more peaceful universe, a more peaceful community.
I've studied numerology for pretty much 21 years, and one of the things that I've come to understand from a numerology standpoint is that the name actually creates a certain resonance in our lives, and some people's names actually are not really a benefit to them. It causes more stress and more disability, and even a lot of research points to that our surnames, when we marry into, like for women who marry into a particular household or into a particular family, they a lot of times will take on the health issues of that family. So if they were ordinarily very slender, but they married into a family where obesity is a problem, they're more likely to become obese. And so I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts on the significance of the vibration of the name that a person takes on as it affects their experience, health, anything?
I do have some experience there, and as far as marrying into a family, you know, the old saying goes, you're not just marrying the person, you're marrying their whole clan. And it does set up what we call resonance and entrainment. Those are principles that we use in the sound world. And if there is I mean, I've known many women saying that they would not change their last name because they didn't like the sound of the new spouse's last name, that they were going to maintain their maiden name. And also I have known a couple of people who have married into a certain type of family where we'll just say it's very disharmonious, and the personality of the female changed dramatically, and after a period of, usually it's between 6 and 7 years, I don't know numerology what that says, but usually after a period of 6 or 7 years, when they go, I can't do this anymore, this is not working, they will leave, and then as soon as they separate from that entrained principle of that family, things shift. They do. They change physically. Most of the time, because of that stress no longer being there, they begin to look younger, and their body shifts, their metabolic system realigns, and they shed pounds. And you know, hence we have in our population today, when people separate from a major relationship, and they go, wow, have you seen him? He looks really great now. Or have you seen her? She looks years younger. They've gotten out of that resonance, of that stressful resonance. You know, I wanted to point out something that we can look at with animals. I was recently at a horse show in Wellington, Florida, and horses are such amazing animals. This is a really large horse show. I think it's one of the largest in the world, and so some of the most exquisite animals are on display there, shown there. And so I was speaking to one trainer, and who uses sound for her horse, and I'll just tell you this little bit about the horse. And so I said, how is it that you use sound on the horse? What type of conditions? And she said, well, when we go out and ride, just like people, our spines get out of get out of alignment. And so she comes back in and uses sound to help the structural alignment of the horse. And one of the other conditions that's really prevalent in the horse world, showmanship world, is stomach ulcers. And the horse they're all very high strung. It's a very stressful situation. All the horses get stomach ulcers. However, this is more of a holistic trainer, and so with her horses, she tries to delay that process, and so she uses sound to help slow down that process and help the horse with anxiety, etc. She was at a stall in a barn that was all the way at the end, and the horse had a little opening where he could go out into a little corral. And I said, wow, you're here for the first year. How did you rate this primo spot with your horse at the very end, and can go out on his own lawn, his own little grassy area, and enjoy the fresh air, nature? And she said, believe it or not, this is what people don't want, because it's too much room for the horses, and they might hurt themselves because they get so amped up. Their anxiety is at such a high level that they may hurt themselves if they are given too much space. So now I will fast forward to a holistic vet who I visited, and she's looking for a particular barn for her horses. And she settled on this one particular property because the horse barn is in a square, and all the horses look in and they can see each other, whereas a lot of other horse barns are just straight rows of a rectangular structure. And she said, horses are community animals, and if they can't see or hear or feel that their other barn family is okay, then they're very anxious. So this is a really amazing thing that I think we can apply to our human communities. We really need to know that everybody's okay, and I know we're doing this online through technology, but we also need the community of conferences and expos like yours, Ethann, that you're hosting, because people do need to come together and know that they're part of a larger picture, that we can connect and relate to each other, to hear our voices. And I'll say one last thing about the sound of someone. One of the exercises that we do at the International Sound Therapy Association, when we teach about the voice, we go around the classroom and we ask each person to say their name. And after they say their name, the rest of the class sings back their name with love in their heart and intention of a blessing for that person with their name. And we have had some people attend the class that have some pretty interesting names that are pretty difficult to pronounce. But every person talks about how much they love that exercise. So if a parent can do anything for their child, is to every day. If a spouse can do anything for their partner, is to every day. If you can do anything for your coworker, to every day speak their name from a place of love. That's the power of sound.
You spoke earlier about how vibration or sound could possibly be, can also be used in negative ways. And I'm curious, at the current state of the world, there are a lot of really amazing things happening underneath the surface. But on the mainstream, there is a lot of violence and a war and a lot of things that people who are of our mindset don't necessarily resonate with. Do you think that there is some kind of cymatic technology being used on a global scale that's maintaining this consciousness, or it's preventing us from breaking beyond that?
That's a really good question, Ethan. I am not sure of technology that is being used detrimentally, other than the HARP program and those types of frequencies. I imagine that there are some people out there working on things like that. We live in this plane of duality, and sometimes we have to look at the other side to get to the higher side. And I choose personally to focus on the uplifting side. Can this make a difference? There was a study by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Transcendental Meditation Group years ago in Washington, D.C., where a group of meditators focused for 2 weeks, meditated in a particular area, and in that area the crime and the violence diminished greatly. And I know you've heard of the Resonance Project, the Global Resonance Project, things like that happening. Just the other day, I heard on the news here in Atlanta where there was a official, police official, who was killed in the line of action, and I heard just a little bit of the service on the radio, and I was really impressed with the person who was leading the service, who had each person present join hands and become aware of their breath and become aware of the sacredness of breath. What a beautiful exercise in a large gathering. And I believe that if we have a lot of things like that happening continuously around the world, that maybe we can make this shift. There's a lot of really horrific things happening in the world, and at some points we need to name them, and at other points I believe that we don't need to give them the energy by physically, audibly saying the name. I do believe in the power of prayer. I do believe in the power of intention, and everything that I know and have learned about ancient scriptures and the power of sound and resonance, I believe that that can have a major impact. Not to say that in the science of cymatics, sometimes to get to that beautiful geometric pattern, we have to endure a period of chaos where everything falls off and we're all left with that look of, what in heaven's name is happening here? So I think we're onto something good. I think we all need to maintain our intention and the love in our hearts and keep this resonant universe as high as possible, keep our vibratory bandwidth up, and all levels of health.
You mentioned Washington, D.C. I'm curious, are there any cymatics symbology built into either any of the buildings there or the overall layout of Washington, D.C. that you know of?
Oh, Washington, D.C. is one of those amazing areas that is full of sacred geometry at every corner, everywhere you look. From the Washington Monument to the Capitol, there's an amazing Masonic temple there. I don't know if you've been to the Masonic, well, there's one in Washington, D.C., and then there's one over across the river in Alexandria. George Washington has a great tribute there. But yes, lots of cymatics happening there, lots of sacred geometry. The four founders who laid out that grid, I'm forever grateful.
So tell me more about your organization and the work that it does, and how people can get involved in any of that.
The International Sound Therapy Association is a nonprofit organization, and our elementary classes, I call them elementary classes because we believe that everyone is in their own right a healing artist. What we teach in our foundational classes are just the basic principles. Once you know a little bit of the basics, then you can pursue your healing art with that knowledge. It's kind of like getting your basic degree, and then you go into your area of specialty. We also provide a foundation for people to submit case studies proving the efficacy of sound. There's a lot of people, you know, a lot of times when I'm on an airplane or someplace at a luncheon and someone asks, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm involved in sound therapy. And particularly if I'm there as part of the International Sound Therapy Association outreach, and they go, oh, you mean Ohm? And as if that could have any power over anything or anybody. And so I say, yes, as a matter of fact, that is part of it. And also we deal with sound technology, which is sort of like the next evolution of ultrasound. And then they go, oh, so we're introducing technology with sound, and somehow or another that gives it some level of credibility. With the International Sound Therapy Association, we welcome all forms of sound, whether it be with the voice, tuning forks, Tibetan bowls, crystal bowls, percussion, sound technology, any form of sound therapy, a sound that can produce a positive effect. And we invite people from around the world to submit studies. We do have a format that they can follow if they've never, participated in a study before. And our goal here, Ethan, is to collect data. If after 500 people writing in or submitting case studies on using a Tibetan bowl for back pain, and we have great results, that is data that is worthy of being published in, say, a pain journal or some type of medical journal. We live here in this wonderful United States of America, where we have a government entity called the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and they keep us safe from a lot of things, right? And so we are doing our best to follow guidelines that and patterns that have been set forth by organizations like the AMA. And it seems like our medical picture is that all of the doctors and medical personnel follow what's published in those journals. And so if we get some items published, as the music therapists have, they've been very good at collating research to support their theories and their experiences. And so this is the goal of the International Sound Therapy Association, is to be taken seriously with this sound, because sound does have a very, very profound effect on cellular tissue, on our states of physical, mental, and emotional beings.
Where do you see all this going, the study of cymatics, its future, and the implications on society as a whole?
I see cymatics increasing the awareness of people. Mostly, we're a visual society. We've got to see it to believe it. Those people from Missouri, show me, the show me state. We've got to produce some type of evidence to the general masses to catch them up to the state where we are. Otherwise, we keep coming back to the same thing. How do we bring people along? It's not like we're trying to really brainwash anyone. We just want to flip the light switch for them to say, you are missing out on this vibratory bandwidth. Come on up here with us and experience life from this perspective, because sound is so profound. I think through the visuals that cymatics can create. And another thing, by the way, that the International Sound Therapy Association does is we encourage school children to do cymatic experiments in their schools. And this helps broaden the awareness. If we can get to the children and they go home and speak to their parents about sound, and the parent goes, oh yeah, maybe I should turn down this ratchety music that's that's playing in the background, because a lot of times people aren't aware. They don't even realize that that kind of music is playing in the background, or that they have indigestion or irritable bowel syndrome, or you know, chronic ulcers in their physical body, because the music that they're listening to is causing them to eat so much, and they're not even chewing their food, they're swallowing it whole. So I think cymatics can come into play here and make people aware. I do believe that it is not far into the future. Will we see it in our lifetime? I'm not sure, but I think very soon we will see cymatics in medicine, where we will actually be able to see the vibratory rate of a cell. And maybe that's some combination of, you know, in Russia there's this thing called the GDV, the gas discharge visualization, where you can see the electromagnetic field. Korotkov is the author of that. We have the voice analysis. We have all kinds of technology that's coming into our reality, where we can measure the energy. Now, do we really need that? I have to admit that I do have a little portion of my brain is a left brain that needs to be satisfied, but I only need just a little snippet of it, because innately within me I have all of these lifetimes of Vedic, Sanskrit, Hebrew, resonant architecture, all of those things that just all of a sudden the lights go off and a whole circuitry happens. But I do believe that for the masses, and for them to talk about it on the 6 o'clock news or whatever the main people are listening to these days, we are going to have a little bit of show and tell for people to come on board and join us in our mission.
Now, people who watch shows like this are really on the leading edge of the awakening of consciousness, and it's, I find that a lot of us, it's easy to get discouraged by what we observe in the mainstream is happening in the world. Do you have any perception or opinion on whether or not you think we've crossed over the threshold to a better, brighter future of higher consciousness and the kind of things you're talking about with regard to cymatics? Or do you think there's still a chance we could go back into a more darker age?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist. So I would like to think that we're about at the tipping point where we'll shift over to a lot of people coming on board with realizing this particular type of perspective is just really wonderful. It is hard for people to because we do get people that come to our programs that, well, let's take all the people that have heart issues, who have stomach issues, and one of the questions I ask is, how much television do you watch? This is television is a wonderful thing. I grew up with it. But is it running you, or are you running it? Do you turn it on just to touch base and see what's going on out there, and then turn it off and say, well, that's not really my reality. I do not choose to come from a place of fear and anger and frustration. I am going to do my part to keep the vibratory rate of the planet on the upside. Meanwhile, we do have to realize that there is a polarity going on out there, and the dark and the light are at odds with each other. Again, I personally, I tune in for a couple minutes every day just to find out what's going on out there, and then I go back to my sound work to see what I can do to bolster up more resources to shift the consciousness, do my part.
Now, you're doing a couple of talks at our workshop and a lecture at our upcoming Expo. Can you give us a little bit of background about what you're going to cover?
Yes, in one lecture I will go into the sacredness of sound and how important that is. I think it's really my mission, my personal mission, is to be able to speak to people in a level that they can understand, and that they can take something home that very day, that very minute, that they can incorporate into their life to begin to make a change. I also, at the end of each of my presentations, is to challenge people and say, hey, could you do this for 30 days? And so I do go into the history and the sacredness of sound. I also, in the Height of Wellness workshop that I'll be doing, is specifically about coming into harmony and balance within the physical body. We have a lot of people who are dealing with really complex medical issues, and with sound, with therapeutic sound, you can relax the body, and this is a huge thing. If the body can just relax and not be armored to go out and fight the battle every day, it's amazing the repair that will happen. And this is something that you can experience by changing the music or the sounds in your environment. You'll notice it right away. It's kind of like giving up caffeine, and at first you go, oh no, that's my fix. But then after a week you go, gee, this is really pretty good. I don't feel, that adrenal fatigue and that type of thing. So we have a lot of people who do deal with complex medical issues, but there is a large portion of the population that want to stay healthy, that want prevention. And this is where the Height of Wellness program with the AMI 750, it's the acoustic meridian intelligence, that we'll be using in that particular workshop, so people can experience that. Many times people say, well, I can't maintain that vibration of that Tibetan bowl. I can't carry the Tibetan bowl around with me all the time. Is there something that I can do that's a quick fix? And so that's what we're going to do in the Height of Wellness workshop. We're going to target prevention, and we're going to target it fast, because that's what we like. We're a fast society. We want it right now.
So where can our viewers get in touch with your organization, the work that you're doing?
There are two websites. For the International Sound Therapy Association, please go to www.ISTA, I-S-T-A, that stands for International Sound Therapy Association, istasound.org. And for Cyma Technologies, that's C with a Cyma with a C, C-Y-M-A, technologies.com. And we welcome any questions, any comments, any suggestions, or contact us if you have a particular project that you want to work on. We're always looking for, sound engineers, acoustic engineers to come on board and experiment with us.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today. We're excited to have you come out here in person and at our upcoming expo. And so I'm looking forward to speaking to you soon. Well, that's it for our show today. Thank you for joining me for Awaken Empowered TV. We'll be back here again a week from now at the same time. And I hope you'll join us at our upcoming expo. You can check out our events at AAEexpo.com. And Mandera will be there, and we have quite a variety of other sound therapy and sound healing experiences there as well. So I'll see you back here a week from now.